I'm Carrie. If you haven't met me before, my name is Carrie, and I'm owner at Classic Cottage Art and Antiques in Bowling Green, Virginia. And I love to encourage people and help them to make beautiful painted furniture, beautiful home decor items, and beautiful jewelry. So tonight is Dixie Belle Paint tips and techniques. We're kind of going to be talking about backgrounds. This is probably, yep, I don't know if you can see it. Here you go with the streaks and things. It's just kind of a cool background, and it's super easy to do. And basically all we're going to do is dry brush a bunch of colors on there and see what we come up with. This is one I was just kind of playing with today, and I put a little bit of, if you can see the shine, a little bit of pearlescent glaze. Dixie Belle has a whole bunch of glazes, but you may be familiar with the brown and the black and the grunge, but we also have pearlescent, there's sapphire pearl, there's bronze shimmer, gold shimmer, all kinds of glazes to make it bling. Flip this one over. So what you're going to need is obviously a board, and this is really good for signs. If you like to make signs with your Cricut or something, this is really good for a background. But let me flip it over. Mine's kind of a mess. But I'm going to use a few different dry chip brushes. I cut my blue sponge in half. I use this to do the background. And if you don't like to get your hands messy, wear vinyl gloves or something. My hands are messy all the time, so. All right, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tray wet here, and I'm going to, this is Hurricane Gray. I've got it in my FIFO bottle just so it's easier to apply. And this, you're going to laugh when you see how easy this is. Basically, I am just going to, my new word is smear it all over the place. So I'm just smearing it on, and see how kind of, you can see, it looks sort of like a stain at this point instead of a paint. You can also do this with the Voodoo Gel Stain. The problem with the Voodoo Gel Stain is it does take a little bit longer to dry, so the paint does, I think, a little bit better for this application. I'm not too worried about the blobs that are there from before because we're going to cover them up. Basically, all we're doing is we're going to be layering paint to create a really neat background. And I don't have a whole lot of water on here because I want it to dry pretty quickly so I can get to the next step. I'm wiping over it so it does dry a little bit. Might be a little too wet. Now, the one thing you want to be thinking about is that this will create mud if you do it too wet. So if you mix too many colors together when it's wet, it'll be muddy. Okay. So now we're gonna play. I have these from where I was messing around before, and a little bit more because I don't want to make mud and show you how to make mud. I want to show you how to make a cool background. But just like that, it's almost dry, and it's dry enough to do what I want to do. See, it's hardly coming off, so it's almost dry. Now the key to this technique is using a dry brush, no water on your brush. And it's simple as, you're going to laugh when you see how simple this is. And I've got a bunch of different colors here. I don't know, let's try, this is Savannah Mist. It's kind of a light blue-gray color. And it got mixed in there with my drop cloth color. No big deal. And honestly, this is all I'm doing. And you're going to say, what in the world is she doing? Then I take my brush, that's why I like to use these old little 2-inch cheapy chip brushes, I call them, because I like to take, and then I'll do this. And I am just kind of rubbing it in. Doesn't look so cool yet, not a problem. I think I'll take some vintage duck egg this time. Same brush, didn't change the brush at all. And then just, same thing. And I am just kind of blending, doing a kind of a dry brush blend technique here. Kind of, sort of. Now you could do this wet too if you wanted to do a different style of blending. I don't think when you do a blend that's wet, to me it doesn't come out as rustic looking. I'm kind of in a rustic looking mode right now. And notice I'm not covering the whole thing because I want streaks. I'm trying to get it where you can see what I'm doing. Now, I could just leave it like that because there's some gray showing through still, and then there's the two colors of blue, but nah, I can't leave it alone. What I might do though is take a paper towel and maybe just kind of blend it a little bit. I'm also drying a little bit. It dries so quickly when you do this technique. That's why I like to do this in classes, because it takes so little time to dry. All right, so let's try some two colors at once. I think that's driftwood and drop cloth. And I might want to fill in there. I mean, it looks like I'm making a really hot mess right now. Once it gets finished, and that's the cool thing about the Dixie Belle paints, you can just blend and blend, you know, layer and layer and layer. Basically, we're creating layers. That doesn't look half bad to me. I don't know what it looks like to you, but to me it doesn't look half bad, because remember, this is just a background. I would be putting something, you know, over it. So it's really just a background for a stencil, or like I've got the letters that I nailed on there. But, and as it dries, it gets a little bit, man, that's looking pretty good actually. But because I just can't stop myself, I'm going to go really off the rails and add a green. What is this one? This is Spanish moss. And oops, that needs to be stirred up just a little bit. It's been sitting a little while. If your paint settles like that, you can see how it's settled. This one's been sitting in here for a little while. It isn't one that I use a lot because honestly I forget how pretty of a color it is. But I just want, oops, a little bit of it. Let's put it right there. And it looks kind of not great like that, but when you put it with other colors, it just adds something to it. And again, this is just a background. Let's put some, I got stuff everywhere. That's the problem. Paint blue. Paint blue is a very pretty light blue. Just remember, when you get paint blue in the jar, for some reason this tends to be one of the thicker Dixie Belle colors. Just mix it with a little water or just shake it up real well. Alright, now this time I am going to add just a tad of water because that paint is so thick. And I'm going to just, and it blends it. It makes more like a khaki color, I guess. And it's looking kind of like a hot mess still. Not a problem. Let's add some Bunker Hill blue in there. That's a very pretty, I call it a bright blue, but I'm just going to streak it. And I'm going to take and I'm going to turn my brush on its side and just kind of rub it in. The green gave it a little more depth, which is kind of good, which is kind of what I was going for. And at any point when you're making this, you can stop. I'm going to turn this over because I keep missing the edge here. At any point, you can stop. You like how it's looking right then? You know, just stop. So far, so good. I tend to make a curve when I do this, if you can see, but that's okay. Again, it's going to be covered up with something else. So this to me, oops, come back here. This has got kind of a beachy look to it, but what if we add some rustic red? I usually put palmetto on here, but I forgot to bring that with me tonight. Now red's a very strong color. Now if you're going to put red on this, make sure this is, and it's probably going to do it, it may turn a little pink on me because it's there's some lighter colors in here, because you know red and white makes pink, but let's see what happens. And you don't need a lot. I mean, even just the littlest bit of another color can add so much to it. Let's just, and this is where I like to like rub it in a little bit. Again, that's why I like to use this old brush, because it's not going to hurt it. I wouldn't do this particular technique that I'm doing now with one of my new synthetic brushes, just because I don't want to ruin it. Oh, let's don't get too hyper with the red, but let's see. that's looking fairly good now. I mean, it's not quite there yet, but this is a kind of a smoother, not quite so rustic look, I don't think. To me, this is kind of a beachy, rustic kind of look. And I could play with it some more. Matter of fact, I just rubbed that in some more, and it actually kind of pushed it in and made it look a little darker. But this is the cool thing. You can mix any kind of colors you want together. Now, this is fine and dandy, but I tend to like to do a frame around mine. So I'm going to take my paper towel here and make sure it's nice and dry before I do that. And just like that, I mean, look, it's not even getting any color on there, so it's pretty much dry. The dry brush technique is super fast and super fun. Okay, so when I do, I'm going to use a different brush for this. I like to take a darker color just to kind of frame it out. And I'm going to take, this is Gravel Road, and I hate to measure, so I eyeball stuff. If you want to measure and put tape and all of that, if you want to make it just right, okay, go for it. But I hardly ever do that because one thing, I just don't have to find my tape usually. It's usually not where I want it. But basically, I'm just going to go along the edge here. And then I'm going to take my brush. And usually when I do this, I go on the edges to kind of make sure it's like a frame. Y'all can see what I'm doing. A bit more paint over here. Now the trick is getting it the same width, but you know, this is kind of, to me, going to be kind of rustic. So I just want to, it doesn't have to be perfect. I've learned that if I try to make stuff too perfect, it just drives me crazy and it actually stresses me out. The cool thing about this, just play. Get some Dixie Belle paint and just play. Because this is fun. And most of the color, I mean all the colors actually, they mix together so well. Now, I got a little bit there, no big deal. I'm just going to rub it in like it's supposed to be part of it. Or I could go back over this with some more of the other colors that I've used. Let's go around the edges. Now I've got this a little bit thicker than I normally do, but oh well. And if you wanted to use an artist brush that had a little bit less of a wispy edges, you could do that to frame this out. Where are we going here? And just like that, this part of the sign is finished. Now, just like that, it looks like a framed piece. Now, of course, I would go along the edges here and do all the edges too, but in the interest of time. And yeah, it's a little bit raggedy, but again, like I said, I'm going to put something, stencil something, or letters that are like, I want to get this, letters like my joy sign here that are wood cutouts. I think that's MDF, but or something on here. So basically, I'm just creating a background for this particular project. The other thing that makes this cool, if you wanted to give it a little bling, there's a couple things you could do. If you wanted to, you don't need to seal it. If it's going to be a sign, no big deal. But you can use our Easy Peasy spray wax. And I'm not now because this is still wet. But you could use the Easy Peasy spray wax, spray it on, leave it for a minute, and wipe it off. And it's a little bit of protection, just a tiny little bit of sheen, nothing major. Or you could use one of our shiny glazes. These are a little bit different than the grunge and the Van Dyke Brown and the black glaze. These are, this has got, I don't know if you can tell on screen, but you can see all the, I'm calling it the bling in there. But I'm actually going to take the same brush I've been using, and I'm going to be real careful because that's not quite dry yet. But this just is going to add a little bit of shimmer. I'm just going to use this part here. I was going to use a pearlescent, but I think the blues might go better with this. Let's see what we got going on here. I think you can see that going on, but you can see how it just kind of gives it a little bit of a shimmer. And if I get it on the gray, no big deal. Just have a shimmery frame look. But basically, that is all there is to it. Oops, come back here. All right. And so it's still kind of wet, and I would get on the edges, but it adds just a little bit of a shimmer. Can you see the shimmer to that and the lights? excuse me, and so this is a really fast and easy way to make a background for a sign. You could actually even use this process on a piece of furniture if you wanted to, you know, create some really interesting effect on a piece of furniture. You could always do that as well. So if you have any questions, just let me know, because dry brushing is a really cool way to just give a piece of furniture or something some interest. Have a great night, and thanks for watching. Bye.